You said Geneva's 13,000?
Yes, ma'am.
And you've also worked for a place 120,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I wonder if, what your hours you put into your job in both places, and did you have an assistant manager in either place?
So, this is my first city manager post, my own first city manager post, so I can say that in each of the jobs, or in each of the cities I worked in prior to this, there was an assistant city manager. They had different roles. I don't have one myself in Geneva. They had different roles. When I was the assistant city manager, we happened to have a lot of growth going on, and so they wanted someone who was very focused on growth management, and so that's the kind of work I did. When I was in Sandy Springs, this is a nice problem to have. The University of Georgia built the revenue projections, and they missed the right way by like 40%. So the city had this major influx of revenues that they didn't anticipate, and they needed a real finance-minded person. So the assistant city manager was more of a finance officer. So yes, in every city except Geneva, we've had an assistant city manager. It really is about the manager looking at his management team profile and saying, do I have a gap? Do I need some talent that I don't have here? And if so, what is it, and who's the right candidate? In terms of number of hours, that is really a person-by-person thing. I am someone who needs to know everything. I like to understand where the revenues are this week. I like to understand how long it's taking to get certain services done. What's the weather look like? We're gonna have to worry about plowing this week? Where's fuel going on? And so even I managed 9 departments for 130 people. In Sandy Springs, my department was 6 divisions with 40 people total, and I worked probably 70 hours a week in both positions. But that's just a personal choice. There are certainly managers who manage cities a lot larger than mine who can do it in 40 hours, and there are managers who work 20 hours a day managing cities half the size of Geneva. So today, right now, my wife's not in the room, so she can't hear if I'm underestimating.
We're on the internet there, so she could. I don't know if she's watching that.
She might be
Your
watching
mom just
Monday Night
texted. She
Football.
said she loves you. Call when you're done.
But so for me today, I'm typically in the office 6 days, and anywhere from 5 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, something like that. But that's a lot of. I learned from some great mentors an old management technique called management by walking around, right? And there's a lot of that goes on. I do like to be in the field. I like to be with my department heads and my leadership team regularly. That means I got to come in at 5 in the morning and return all your emails and get the nuts and bolts work done.
Other questions? So Dick.
I am curious to hear you talk about city debt.
Sure.
How that's derived, how big it is, how hard the debt service is for you.
Mm-hmm. So City Council has established a debt policy, and our debt policy today, we set an index. We didn't pick this number out of the air. We used it for a lot of different reasons. We looked at 2012 as a place in time where we started to feel uncomfortable, where it started to get up to our chin, and we said, we don't want to be this uncomfortable. So moving forward, we will only take on new debt as old debt rolls off. And so since 2012, we've remained below that 2012 margin. That's one way to do it. There are certainly a range of ways to do it, but that policy is always set by City Council. It's not always. Not every community has a debt policy, to be honest with you, but communities with great bond ratings and great audits and great reputations financially do, and those policies need to be set at the council level.
And how bad is debt service?
In our organization, not too bad. We are independent of water and wastewater debt. Our debt service accounts for less than 10% of our total general fund. That's an off the top of my head number, so it'll be close to that.
But so again, it's just to be clear, right? It's the council that sort of sets the taxing and spending policies, the debt policies, the capital budget.
Yeah. So I have an appendix to my budget that is all of the council adopted policies, and they adopt them by reference every year and review them by reference every year. And yeah, so we have a policy on debt. We have a policy on how we're going to forecast revenue, because crafty managers can come in and say, yeah, sales tax looks great next year, so that they can assuage fears of a property tax increase or to stave off an assessment change. And what always happens is, if you're forecasting with your heart and not with your head, it's like betting on it's like betting on the Bills. I'm a Bills fan, so you're doing it with your heart, not your head. So you set these policies outside of the budget process, because it doesn't make sense for me to set a debt policy when I got a beautiful picture of a capital project I want to get done, right? So we set the debt policies when council takes office, and we hold to them. Revenue forecasting is conservative, objective, and reasonable. Those are the three key words, and it's in the policy. Council affirms it when they get elected. And I mean, all the way down to the format of the budget, because you all have experiences of your own with budgets in a variety of forms, and you know how you want your spreadsheet to look. You know how you want your bank account to look. And when you get elected, you carry some of that with you, and you say, I wish the budget said this, or I wish the budget said that. And so every year, every election, we sit down in year one and say, what do you want your budget to look like? And this city council I'm with today got a lot of numbers people on there. So they want to see the debt. They want to see, even on the debt we're paying right now that we've already committed to, we've already obligated ourselves to, they want to see what that debt was for. They want to know what the 2013 bond issue was for, so that we remember. We're constantly remembering how we invested our money. But yeah, they're set by policy, by council, and at a time when the heat is off, when we're not influenced by a single instance.
Is that sort of depoliticization of the financial process? Do you think that improves your budgeting and your financial systems?
It absolutely does, because we're people, and when we get into a crisis, some of us don't think as smartly as we do when cooler heads prevail. And so setting financial policies when you're running for election, probably a bad idea. That's why we do it in January, when you have already won and you already have an opportunity. Now you have an opportunity to do something of your own for 4 years. But shooting at the budget from the sidelines in a political way is not productive. And there are two. I mean, this is a little bit of a cliche, but there's big P and little p politics, right? And little p politics are just as bad. Organizational politics. You try to lock all of that out when you're working with numbers, because at the end of the day, at the end of the year, when that revenue number comes out and that expense number comes out, if they're not in the right order, then you're not gonna have a good year next year.
I'm sorry. Other questions? Yeah, Pat.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about you had a $10 million grant awarded to you. That's great. Congratulations. I know, like Saratoga, you're an all-American city.
We are.
Won that 2015.
Yes, that's correct.
But you talk about the ever-changing need for money, and of course, no one wants to raise taxes unless you absolutely have to, which no one wants to, of course. Share with me something that's innovative that you've been able to help Geneva succeed financially without impacting them negatively.
How do you squeeze pennies? Because it seems to be a lot of you city managers, you're kind of like green eye-shaped guys, fundamentally.
Well, I'll give two exampleples while we're on the subject of Hobart William Smith colleges. There's a perennial debate, and I don't know, Skidmore, inside the city limits or outside? Inside the city limits, so you deal with this. Perennial debate. College is off the tax roll, right? And the city of Geneva is home to Hobart William Smith colleges. Cornell University has their food research department in Geneva. Finger Lakes Community College has a campus in Geneva. Finger Lakes Health is our regional health system. They're based in Geneva. And so a number that gets thrown around out there that I can dive deeper on with you at a different time is 60% of the value is off the tax rolls. All right? And people look at Hobart and William Smith colleges and say, they're the problem. They've got this beautiful lakefront campus. I mean, their campus actually sits on Seneca Lake. We've got these great big buildings, all this acreage. And for years, that was the rallying cry. We've got to do something about the colleges in this tax rate. We've got to do something about the colleges in this tax rate. And I came at it from a million different angles. Think about payroll. Think about what the college is spending here. forget about the students for a second. Think about what the professors and the admin folks, and it was just falling on deaf ears because the people at home were still writing those tax checks every year, and they were still thinking about 60% off the tax rolls. So we looked at some creative ways to do it, to deal with that. And we went all kinds of crazy backwards ways to get to a point where we were being sued by Hobart and William Smith colleges, the Catholic Church, the hospital, all people you want on your side at some point. And we got cooler heads to prevail. We brought people around the table and started having a conversation about could the colleges and the hospital, because some of our policies were treating Finger Lakes Health the same as the Salvation Army. They were both having to pay a tax bill. The Salvation Army is going to go out of business if they got to pay the tax bill. Finger Lakes Health, it's just another payable to them, right? So we got all of the right people around the table and ultimately struck a 10-year deal where over 10 years, between Hobart and William Smith colleges and the hospital, they would pay us about $2.5 million unrestricted cash into the general fund, which we used immediately to offset the tax rate. We just rolled the tax rate right back and did it by the exact amount that they paid us. The second is on the expense side, and that is we have got to, and this is what you're dealing with, I know in your analysis, we have got every year a new mandate, every year a new rule about how we can recognize revenue or not recognize revenue, a new rule about the service that has to be delivered with no offsetting payment from the state every single year. And so we're always trying to find ways to do what we can to keep expenses down. In the last, we're in year 3 now of a partnership. About 10 miles down the road, the city of Canandaigua is a city of about 10,000 people. And we engaged in a shared services program with them. So we had a couple of key retirements in both of our respective organizations. One example was the assessor, the city assessor. In both places, the assessor was retiring, and we went out and did a single recruitment for one assessor that we shared. And we saved $100,000 a year, and that's the gift that keeps on giving every year. We did the same thing with IT. The city of Canandaigua was outsourcing their IT function, paying an annual contract. We looked at our workload and twisted our IT director's arm a little bit and said, could you do 2 cities instead of 1? And for a minor incremental cost increase, he could, but then we were able to split the entire IT package by 2. And then you're able to go to the next level and say, do we need 2 sets of servers and 2 sets of this and 2 sets of that? And you don't, you start to consolidate that stuff over time. So between regional collaboration and then just some creative revenue shaming with the major not-for-profits we were able to get. On the whole, I think between all of our shared services programs and our Hobart and William Smith stuff, we're well over, let's call it $5 or $6 million in savings.
Questions about unions.
Yes.
How many unions do you have? Who negotiates contracts and who approves them? And are they approved as the old ones expire? Are they approved in a timely way?
Sure.
And if not, why not?
Yeah, so one point of pride of mine, first, Geneva is the very first place that I've ever negotiated with a union. So no other community I've ever worked in had unions. But a point of pride of mine is that I've never gone to arbitration over a contract. We've always been able to settle. Now, some people say because I give away the store, or some people will say I'm just a heck of a negotiator. The truth is in the middle somewhere, but responsibility for negotiating contracts falls to me. I use a team that includes myself, the finance director, and the human resources director. We have 6 unions, 1 for police command, 1 for police officers, public works foremen, public works laborers, firefighters, and administrative staff people. All of those contracts, at the longest we've ever gone with a contract not getting approved beyond its expiration date was a few months, and that had more to do with the fact that they were shift work employees who couldn't get together in time to ratify. It's rare. We actually put right in our contracts, here's the negotiating schedule for the next time.
And then do you get direction from the city council on what you want to, what the goal is?
Yes, so in those January sessions, we talk about which contracts are expiring this year and what council's looking for. For the past several years, they've been very focused on compensation growth, total compensation growth. So they'll establish a total compensation cap. The fire department has one that's always ripe for conversation is fire department has a minimum staffing clause, and they always want me to start by trying to get that out or get something good for it on the back end. We just this year were able to adopt substance abuse policies for all of the unions. That was something that we've been after for a while. And those are all guidances that I get from City Council.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, good. Well, listen, okay, Pat, I'll let you.
Are city managers expensive?
Yeah, I would say that you get your money's worth. I was able to look at what the forecast was in the report for this position, and I'll say that's in the range for upstate New York. Certainly, there are I would say cities your size, 100 to 150,000 is probably right in the wheelhouse.
Great. Well, listen, thank you very much. I'm always impressed. One of the things that I've learned in this process is that Saratoga Springs are engaged and concerned and intelligent questions. They grilled you, Matt, and I think you have helped sort of dispel whatever myths or concerns or mysteries there are about city management. I thank you very much for coming here.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.